let the truce fall apart over Lebanon, insisting that a halt to Israel's fighting there was never a part of the agreement. Vance will lead talks with Iran beginning Saturday in Islamabad.
Iran announces alternative routes for ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz, cites the risk of sea mines in the main zone, and Tehran has agreed to temporarily reopen the strait. But reports say oil tankers have been stopped after alleged ceasefire breach.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer meets Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh in the first stop of his Gulf tour.
Oil prices climbed on Thursday as Iran accused the US of breaching a fragile ceasefire, raising fresh supply concerns. Brent and US crude both jumped over 2%, rebounding after a sharp drop, while uncertainty around the truce keeps markets on edge.
US President bashes NATO and appears to renew his threats over Greenland after a closed-door meeting with the alliance chief Mark Rutte. He writes on Truth Social, NATO wasn't there when we needed them, and they won't be there if we need them again.
Hundreds of workers, union members and opposition supporters marched in Senegal's capital Dakar to protest what they say are broken government promises and a worsening cost of living as the country is plagued by a severe debt crisis.
Well, voting for assembly elections in Assam, Kerala and the Union Territory of Puducherry begins. Votes are also being cast for by-polls in 3 states, Nagaland, Karnataka, Tripura.
It's been just over 24 hours since a 2-week truce between Iran and the US was announced, but the fate of the 2-week ceasefire already looks in peril.
And this is with Tehran threatening to resume hostilities as Israel continued to bombard Lebanon. There are too many weak points in this existing ceasefire agreement. Iran has halted the passage of oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, and both Iran and the US have given divergent versions of what had been agreed to. Washington and Tehran both claimed victory after agreeing to that 2-week ceasefire, that double ceasefire as Trump called it, and negotiations aimed at ending the war.
However, fractures emerged quickly as Israel carried out its heaviest strikes on Lebanon since the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah joined the war in early March. Strikes across capital Beirut without warning triggered scenes of horror and panic. Reports even suggest that more than 250 people have been killed and nearly 900 wounded on Wednesday alone. United Nations Rights Chief called the scale of killing as horrific.
We have more goals to complete, and we will achieve them either by an agreement or by renewing the fighting. We are prepared to return to fighting at any moment necessary. Our finger is on the trigger.
Israel said that its battle against Hezbollah is not part of the truce, an argument echoed by US Vice President J.D. Vance as well. And this was days before that he is due to lead talks with Tehran in Pakistan. That's due just this weekend.
I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states. Look, if Iran wants to let this negotiation fall apart in a conflict where they were getting hammered over Lebanon, which has nothing to do with them and which the United States never once said was part of the ceasefire, that's ultimately their choice. We think that would be dumb, but that's their choice.
Now, Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf appeared to threaten the ceasefire, posting on X that the workable basis on which to negotiate had already been violated, which made further talks unreasonable. Ghalibaf even listed 3 alleged US violations of the proposal, and those are what he termed as the continued attacks in Lebanon, a drone entering Iranian airspace, and even denial of the country's right to enrichment, leaving the longevity of the truce uncertain.
And Iran's Revolutionary Guards warned that they would fulfill the duty and deliver a response if Israel did not cease its strikes in Lebanon, while Hezbollah said it had a right to respond. And Iran announces alternative routes for ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz, citing the risk of sea mines that have been laid by Iran itself in the main zone of the vital waterway. Under the truce, Iran has agreed to reopen the strait temporarily with ships passing through the strategic waterway on Wednesday. But reports suggest that the waterway was shut again later that same day, that's just yesterday, despite the ceasefire, prompting the White House to call on Iran to reopen it immediately, quickly and safely.
Adding to the fragility of the truce is White House insistence that Iranian plan being discussed in media is not the workable framework received by US officials.
The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this room have falsely reported on that plan as being acceptable to the United States, and that is false.
Now, this shows that many issues remain unresolved, starting with the basis of the negotiations themselves, that 10-point plan. The mediators, that is Pakistan, are due to host the Americans and the Iranians for talks in Islamabad, possibly as early as Friday or over the weekend. All right, joining us live now from Washington, D.C. is John Rosomondo, president of Viking Research Associates, geostrategist and expert on national security. Mr. Rosomondo, thank you so much for making time for us. Let's just start right off. Yes, John, let's just start with Lebanon. The worst strikes that Lebanon has seen, and it happens after the ceasefire gets announced. Let me just quickly substantiate what I'm saying, because the US is saying that this was never part of the ceasefire, but the only verbal aspect of that ceasefire came from the Pakistani Prime Minister, who mentioned Lebanon and elsewhere effective immediately as part of the immediate ceasefire. In fact, Lebanon was the only country he actually mentioned. How do you see the statements coming out from the White House saying Lebanon was never part of the deal?
Well, I see the Pakistani Prime Minister, as we say in America, freelancing and putting words in the White House's mouth, showing the unreliability of Pakistan as a mediator.
But tell me, John, when they have been mediators here, the US has relied on them. They are even going to Islamabad, that's scheduled in less than 48 hours. The Vice President of the United States is going to be visiting Pakistan, and the core aspect of that ceasefire seems to be in peril. What do you even expect? If they're going there, clearly there is some trust, otherwise the US Vice President would never step on Pakistani soil. Does that not substantiate what Pakistan is saying?
No, I think that you have to realize President Trump is all about personal relationships, and he has a strong relationship with Field Marshal Simranir, Pakistan's defense minister, and with Shehbaz Sharif, the Pakistani prime minister. but I don't think that substantiates anything. I mean, you have a relationship, and I think that you can't uncouple Lebanon from Iran because Hezbollah is basically an adjunct of the RGC.
John, we're having issues with the connectivity. I'll request if you could rework the connectivity once and we can continue with our discussion because I'm unable to catch exactly what you're trying to say. Let's give it a little more time. We'll reconnect with John in a few minutes, and once this connection is stable, we will continue. But what we were discussing, and Samiksha, we were discussing this in the newsroom as well, that Lebanon seems to be the thorn that can have the potential to make this entire ceasefire fall apart because it's crucial to Iran.
Well, absolutely, Shivan. And that's puts Pakistan in a spot here because Pakistan has insisted that Lebanon was very much a part of the ceasefire that's been agreed upon.
And even what I quoted with our guest, Samiksha, this is exactly what the Pakistani Prime Minister said, that they have agreed to an immediate ceasefire. And by they, I mean America and Iran, everywhere, including Lebanon and elsewhere, immediately, effective immediately. In fact, that's what I was mentioning, that I reasoned that Lebanon is the only country that was mentioned when he mentioned the ceasefire. Now, one would understand that this is what is driving the ceasefire talks. We will try to reconnect with John or get more voices on the platform soon enough as we have a stable connection. As of now, let's move further. More updates to continue.
President Donald Trump has come down heavily on NATO after a meet with its Secretary General, Mark Rutte.
Well, in a post on Truth Social, Trump criticized the alliance for what he sees as a lack of support during the war in West Asia. He said, and I'm quoting him here, NATO wasn't there when we needed them, and they won't be there if we need them again. He also took an aim at Greenland yet again, calling the Danish territory big, poorly run piece of ice.
Important to note here, discussing his displeasure with NATO earlier this week, the US president had said that it all began with Greenland. Tensions were reportedly high when Rutte met Trump in Washington on Wednesday, and it was while speaking exclusively to CNN after the meet. He said US president is clearly disappointed with many NATO allies and that he sees his point. In fact, the NATO chief, however, said that it was a very frank, very open discussion between two friends.
Well, their meeting came just as Wall Street Journal posted an exclusive article that suggests that the Trump administration is in fact considering a plan to punish some members of the NATO alliance that he believes were unhelpful to the US and Israel during the war with Iran.
The proposal, which is now in circulation among senior administration officials, would involve withdrawing American troops from certain NATO countries and even repositioning them in countries deemed more cooperative. The US currently maintains approximately 84,000 troops across Europe.
Well, the Trump administration officials cited in the report noted that the plan stops short of full American withdrawal from NATO, an action that would, by law, require congressional approval.
All right, we have John Rosamando back with us. He's president of Viking Research Associates. Mr. Rosamando, talking about the Strait of Hormuz, there is clearly a lot of ambiguity over the same. As we speak, the strikes continue on Lebanon. And while all of this is happening, what do you think is the situation? Because there is a lack of clarity over who controls the traffic. And also, in your view, do you think even if a temporary ceasefire remains in place, there is security that is guaranteed as far as the ships that pass through the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, let's put it this way. Under international law, all traffic is guaranteed free and open passage. I mean, the Omani transportation minister put out a statement today in which he said that there would be no tolling. But the problem is, due to the assassinations of the IRGC leadership, every single provincial IRGC unit is acting on its own. So it's hard to say who really is responsible for anything right now and who's really running the country in Iran.
John, the White House press secretary, she mentioned that the traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has been increased because the same question was posed to her just a little over 6-7 hours ago during that press conference. And she said that the traffic has increased and gradually it will continue to increase. But if you just look at that 10-point plan from Iran, they mentioned very categorically, one of the points is continuation of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. And that's not something that Iran wants to let go of, because if they've realized anything in these last 6 weeks, in spite of everything else, that they can really have leverage across the world as long as they control that strait. That's a strength that they figured out. Some people are even calling it, or analysts are calling it, Iran's actual nuclear weapon. It's the Strait of Hormuz. But at this point, the US president also perhaps wants in on that $500 billion gate that is perhaps possible if there is a charge or a toll levied on vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz. They're not going to let it go, the Iranis. It's too much leverage for them. Do you feel there is any possibility of it being opened up if Iran doesn't want it to be opened?
Well, I think that in that case, you start having to look at military options to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, because Iran is violating international law. It's against the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea to impede the passage of shipping in and out of straits like the Strait of Hormuz. And I think that the United Nations is being played for a fool with this, because Iran is a signatory of that treaty, yet it is completely violating international law, and nobody's talking about that.
In fact, international law, as you mentioned before I pass over to Samiksha, those posts coming out from the US president threatening that he will blow up power plants, civilian infrastructure, bridges, that's a direct threat, and none of that is keeping in line with international law. So that part of the rulebook has completely been blown into oblivion from both sides, it's what it seems. But Samiksha, go over.
Yes, yes. Mr. Rosumondo, talking about the talks that are to happen in Islamabad, that is, if they do happen on Friday, talk to us about the kind of role you see J.D. Vance specifically playing, given that he's the one who is supposed to lead the talks, other than Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, who will also be a part of that visit to Islamabad from the US side.
Well, I think that sending J.D. Vance is a kind of conciliation, because he's been the one who has been trying to oppose any kind of war with Iran. I mean, he's been the source of a lot of the leaks that were skeptical of U.S. intervention with Iran. So I think that sends kind of a message of conciliation, as opposed to Witkoff and Kushner, who Iran views as betrayed them twice in diplomatic negotiations.
All right, John, that's one perspective. The Iranians argue that it was in the middle of diplomatic talks that the war was started, so they feel it's a betrayal on their part. But what we can agree is that there is a complete lack of trust from both sides regarding anything that's continuing. It's been just a little over 24 hours since that ceasefire, and just look at the attacks that have taken place across the Gulf region, from Kuwait to UAE to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all intercepting missiles even now, and Lebanon continues to get bombed from the other side. US is very much in favor of that, saying it was never part of the ceasefire. The Strait of Hormuz, not sure who it's being controlled by, and then Lebanon, whether it was even part of the ceasefire or not. This is the setting in which the US delegation is going to be heading to Pakistan, of all places. We understand how sturdy that nation is for talks in a scenario where the war and the trust factor is here. Let's just wait and watch, because this seems far from over. That was John Rosumondo joining us. Thanks so much, John.
Thank you.
And let's also look at other developments. Russia has issued a stark warning, alleging that the European Union is quietly exploring the development of its own nuclear weapons capabilities.
Well, Moscow says that the move could destabilize global security. In fact, this is according to Russian Foreign Intel Service. Confidential discussions are underway within EU institutions, and that is to assess the feasibility of building a nuclear arsenal.
Moscow says that they say this despite public claims that such measures are purely defensive. Moscow argues that this signals a dangerous shift away from long-standing non-proliferation commitments.
The statement also singles out Germany, claiming its scientific infrastructure could rapidly produce weapons-grade materials. Russian intel alleges that German laboratories could obtain sufficient plutonium for a nuclear device within a month's time, while enriched uranium could be produced in as little as a week.
Russia further accused the EU leadership, including European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, of escalating tensions and risking a new global arms race. Moscow has urged the United States and other nations to intervene, warning that any EU move towards nuclear weapons would severely undermine the international non-proliferation system and even threaten global stability.
Werden, muss mehr tun für seine Verteidigung. Ein starkes Europa bedeutet auch eine starke NATO.
Now in Amsterdam, a new kind of club is grabbing attention, where people are willingly stepping away from their screens.
Phones are left at the door, notifications silenced, and the digital world is paused for a few hours. If you're a millennial, you'll know what parties used to be like without phones in your hands. But this is now coming back in a trend, at least in Amsterdam. This is not a service in a church, though it takes place in one. Yes. And the place is about no service at all. The Posthurenkerk, a former place of worship, has been transformed into a space for the simple act of being offline. Participants are required to hand over their smartphones at the gate before taking part in a 2-hour creative session.
I think, it's nice to like touch that pen and paper, like that physical element. It just grounds you, I think. And for sure, like looking back, as a child, I would always be drawing and things like that. So it definitely also is a bit of an inner child, who doesn't want to be behind the screen and be online all the time.
The event is part of the Offline Club, a movement that started in 2024 when 3 students in Amsterdam wanted to explore life without digital distractions. What began as a small meetup in a cafe has now grown into a network of offline events across Europe. Today, the Offline Club organizes sessions in 18 cities and has attracted a following of about 600,000 people on Instagram.
During the session, the participants engage in a mix of creative and reflective activities. Some work on personal projects like writing, crafting, or puzzles. Others join group activities, from board games to walks. One exercise asks attendees to prepare a speech for their 80th birthday. A moment to think about life and the future. The session begins with a live piano performance by a composer and pianist, Cecile Schult, setting a quiet, focused tone.
I think it's important to just connect. For me personally, I find myself being quite often on the internet, but also scrolling. So these kind of activities is allowing me to really understand what it means to be present, and also slow down the mind, because it's always going it continues to go, and you don't have time for yourself.
This offline movement mirrors a larger trend, especially among younger people who are looking to reduce time on social media and reconnect with themselves. The desire to step back from screens is becoming increasingly visible online as users announce plans to cut down or quit their digital routines.
All right, viewers, this is World DNA. We'll step into a very short break. More coming up on the other side. Voting for assembly elections in Assam, Kerala and the Union Territory of Puducherry begins. Votes are also being cast for by-polls in 3 Indian states, Nagaland, Karnataka and Tripura. Stay with us. Lots more lined up.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Samiksha. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines.
Voting is underway in assembly elections in Assam, Kerala and the Union Territory of Puducherry. Votes are also being cast for by-polls in 3 states, Nagaland, Karnataka and Tripura.
The truce between Iran and the US enters the second day as Tehran threatens to resume hostilities if Israel continues its bombardment of Lebanon.
Israeli military says it hit over 100 targets in just 10 minutes in Lebanon in the biggest strike against Hezbollah since the start of its operation last month. Reports say more than 250 people have been killed in Israeli strikes in a single day.
Hezbollah says it has fired rockets towards Israel in response to its violation of the US-Iran truce. Hezbollah targeted Manara near the border with Lebanon with a rocket barrage.
I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't.
US Vice President J.D. Vance urges Iran not to let the truce fall apart over Lebanon, insists that a halt to Israel's fighting there was never a part of the agreement. Vance will lead talks with Iran in Islamabad.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer meets Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh in the first stop of his Gulf tour.
President Donald Trump bashes NATO and appears to renew his threats over Greenland after a closed-door meet with Alliance Chief Mark Rutte. Writes on Truth Social that NATO wasn't there when we needed them and that they won't be there if we need them again.
Hundreds of workers, union members and opposition supporters march in Senegal's capital, Dakar, to protest what they say are broken government promises and a worsening cost of living as the country is plagued by a severe debt crisis.
Asian markets opened mixed on Thursday as Iran's parliament accused the US of breaching a two-week ceasefire. US futures slipped slightly, but overnight Wall Street surged after Trump paused attacks on Iran, boosting global investor sentiment. Well, voting has begun in Assam, Kerala and Puducherry in high-stakes electoral battles.
Voting is being held for 126 seats in Assam, 140 in Kerala, 30 in Puducherry in this phase of the elections. Let's start by looking at Kerala first. Over 2.6 crore electors will decide the fate of 883 candidates across 140 constituencies. The election is being seen as a contest between the ruling Left Democratic Front LDF and the opposition United Democratic Front UDF. Meanwhile, the BJP-led NDA is also looking to expand its footprint in the southern state.
On to Assam, where more than 2.5 crore electors are eligible to exercise their franchise for 126-member Legislative Assembly. A total of 722 candidates are in the fray. The Congress has stitched a 6-party alliance to take on the ruling BJP-led NDA, which is seeking its third successive term in office.
And in Puducherry, about 10 lakh electors are eligible to cast their votes to elect a 30-member Legislative Assembly. Here, the main contest is between the ruling National Democratic Alliance, which included the BJP and the Congress, and the Congress DMK alliance.
Other states, namely Tamil Nadu, will go to polls on 23rd of April, while West Bengal will hold elections in 2 phases, that is on the 23rd and 29th of April. Votes will be counted together for the 4 states and 1 union territory on the 4th of May.
And a court in Nepal has issued arrest warrants against former Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba and his wife Arzu Rana Deuba.
And authorities have launched a money laundering probe against them with plans to seek an Interpol red notice as the couple remains abroad.
Well, the warrants were issued by the Kathmandu District Court. Officials say that the move places the couple on a fugitive list as authorities prepare to seek an Interpol red notice. Investigators believe the Deuba couple are currently in Singapore for medical treatment. In a social media post, Deuba denied all allegations and expressed faith in the judicial process.
The money laundering investigation involves 3 former prime ministers and 2 former ministers. Nepal Police and the Central Investigation Bureau are working to track financial transactions and asset discrepancies in the same.
The case gained momentum after burnt fragments of currency notes were recovered from the residences of political leaders following the September 2025 Gen Z protest in Nepal. Forensic tests confirmed the fragments were genuine banknotes. Videos showing cash burning inside the Deuba residence had earlier gone viral during that same protest.
Sher Bahadur Deuba is one of Nepal's most influential political figures, having served as Prime Minister 5 times since 1991. Authorities have also expanded the investigation to family members, with raids conducted at related properties and documents seized as well. On to North Korea then, that has tested multiple weapon systems over 3 days this week.
That includes the firing of ballistic missiles and even cluster bombs. The tests came as North Korea reiterated its characterization of South Korea as a hostile enemy, dashing hopes for easing tensions on the Korean peninsula.
Well, according to North Korean state media, the tests took place on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday as part of regular efforts to develop and upgrade weapon systems. KCNA added that a mobile short-range anti-aircraft missile system and electromagnetic weapon system was tested.
State media claimed that the exercises validated the use of surface-to-surface tactical ballistic missiles Hwasong-411, adding that the missile tipped with the cluster bomb warhead can decimate any target covering an area of 6 to 7 hectares, while carbon fiber sham bombs, described as special assets of strategic nature, were also launched.
South Korea's military earlier said that North Korea had fired multiple short-range ballistic missiles in 2 rounds on Wednesday and an unidentified projectile the previous day. South Korea even said that a short-range missile fired in the second round of launches in the day flew more than 700 kilometers.
Earlier, Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara said that the missile launched on Wednesday reached a maximum altitude of approximately 60 kilometers before landing outside Japan's exclusive economic zone in the Sea of Japan. Kihara condemned the repeated missile launches, stating that North Korea's actions threaten the peace and security of Japan as well as the region.
Regarding this launch, Japan has lodged a strong protest with North Korea through diplomatic channels at the embassy in Beijing and strongly condemned the action. The government intends to continue working closely with the United States, South Korea, and other countries to gather and analyze necessary information while maintaining the highest alert and surveillance.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was not reported to have attended the launches. No photos of the launches have yet been released by official media. Analysts even say that the launches, which are North Korea's 4th and 5th known ballistic missile tests this year, signaled the latest rebuff of Seoul's attempts to repair ties with the North. South Korea has termed the launches as provocation, calling it a violation of UNSC resolutions.
And let's go back to looking at the West Asian region. Iran has announced alternative routes for ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, the country has cited the risk of sea mines in the main zone of the strait as it temporarily opened the waterway. Traffic through it remained extremely limited on Wednesday. At least 2 ships, both bulk carriers, including one coming from Iran, crossed a few hours after the truce was announced. A third, the Botswana-flagged and Chinese-owned Hai Long 1, also coming from Iran, was almost done transition in the Strait of Wednesday afternoon. And this is according to the data by Maritime Monitor Marine Traffic.
Well, the tally only includes vessels navigating with their transponders switched on. Other boats may have also passed through with their signals switched off. Iranian parliament has meanwhile approved a draft bill to formalize transit fees for ships passing through the strait. The proposed law seeks to institutionalize a system that has already been taking shape over the past few weeks.
Under Iran's proposed system, ships carrying Iranian oil or goods would be allowed to pass without charges. Vessels from countries seen as friendly could be required to pay fees, reportedly around $2 million. Ships from countries considered unfriendly in Iran could face limits or may even be denied passage altogether.
Donald Trump says that he is considering a possible joint venture with Tehran to manage and collect tolls in the waterway. In an interview with ABC News, journalist Jonathan Karl asked Trump whether he supported Iran's plan to charge ships passing through the strait. His response was later shared by Karl on X. Here's what he said. Answering the question, the US president said, and I quote, "We're thinking of doing it as a joint venture. It's a way of securing it. also securing it from lots of other people. It's a beautiful thing.
The idea was also backed by Trump's earlier Truth Social post, in which he stated there was big money to be made if the US helped manage increased traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, he even went on to suggest that America could impose its own tolls on vessels transiting the channel. But if Washington moves ahead with the move, it would likely require direct American military control over the Strait of Hormuz. Well, global markets have whipsawed significantly since the start of the war with Iran.
And the threat of escalation and a brief period of deal negotiations news have resulted in wild gyrations in the financial markets. In this next report, we decode a clear pattern of huge bets resulting in wild swings to the tune of $2 to $3 trillion in market value just before key geopolitical announcements. Take a look.
As you know, we attacked. And we can bomb the hell out of them. We can knock them out.
There is a clear pattern in President Trump's ultimatums, followed by an extension to that threat.
Please keep bombing. Do it.
The strike warnings come just ahead of the weekend, and in the first few sessions of the following week, there is an extension announcement. The timing of certain high-profits trades just before those key announcements have raised insider knowledge questions. The latest being the Tuesday 8 p.m. Eastern Time deadline set for Iran to open Hormuz, or face the wrath of American strikes on civilian infrastructure. The market theme of a sharp sell-off, followed by rapid gains, played out again with the ceasefire deal just before the deadline. From April 3rd though to April 8th, stock markets crashed and oil prices surged as the US president escalated his threat. After having surged over 15% to above $110 per barrel before Tuesday's deadline, Brent crude crashed over 20% to about $91 a barrel almost immediately after the temporary deal. US crude plunged nearly $20 to around $95 per barrel. Wall Street stocks erased over 1% losses to surge over 2% post the announcement. The dollar fell over 1% against the euro as safe haven demand saw some momentum loss. Bitcoin gained to a 3-week high, rising over 4% to above $72,000. The sell-off, followed by a market surge, showed a nearly $2 trillion swing. This is not a one-off incident. A similar trend was seen between March 20th and 25th. On March 20th, Trump threatened a 48-hour ultimatum for Iran to open the Hormuz or face attacks on power plants. On March 23rd, the president postponed the deadline by 5 days, citing progress in negotiations with Tehran. And on March 26th, Trump delayed the attacks by another 10 days to the latest deadline. The market swings were wild following those ultimatums and negotiations. On March 24th, at 7:04 a.m. Eastern Time, Trump said the US and Iran have had productive discussions to end the Iran war. By 7:10 a.m. Eastern Time, the S&P 500 surged 240 points, adding $2 trillion in market value. 27 minutes later, Iran completely denied Trump's claims. By 8 a.m. Eastern Time, the S&P 500 had fallen 120 points, erasing $1 trillion in market cap. That's a $3 trillion swing in market cap in just 56 minutes. Separately, a Financial Times report showed that huge bets were placed 15 minutes prior to Trump's post about a potential peace deal on March 24th. While officials denied any wrongdoing, those trades generated over $100 million worth of profit in about 20 minutes. Reports also found that newly created polymarket accounts made several high-profit, well-timed bets on US geopolitical actions. Those wagers came just before they were publicly announced by Trump. Iran ceasefire bets are not the first instance of such trades on polymarket. Trades placed bets just before the US struck Iran on February 28th. Earlier in the year, one account created on polymarket placed bets of the removal of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro just hours before Trump's announcement. The newly created polymarket accounts have often displayed exclusive behavior. Experts and politicians have raised concerns that these trades belong to insiders with connections to top policymakers. Senator Chris Murphy has called for investigations into war profiteering. Reports also noted that Donald Trump Jr. sits on the advisory board of Polymarket's parent company. Since the Iran war began, such a reversal in oil and stocks has almost sent gold prices higher. But gold and silver were little changed, trading near mid-December levels. That clearly shows a flawed trading pattern, diverging away from market fundamentals with no clear answers. Business Bureau WION World is One.
European researchers have found that thousands of men are part of Telegram groups offering hacking and surveillance services.
And these services are being used to harass women, including partners and ex-partners as well. The study also warns of widespread sharing of abusive content, including non-consensual images and other exploitative material.
Also, the findings come from European non-profit group AI Forensics, which analyzed nearly 2.8 million messages across 18 Telegram communities in Italy and Spain in over a 6-week period earlier this year. The study found that more than 24,000 users participated, sharing over 82,000 files, including images, videos, and audio clips.
Researchers say these groups routinely promote and sell services such as hacking, surveillance, and so-called nudifying tools used to create fake explicit images. The communities also facilitate the distribution of non-consensual intimate content alongside claims of material involving child sexual abuse, incest, rape, while some posts target celebrities and social media influencers. The report finds that many users also exploit women they know personally, including friends, partners, and former partners. The report adds that these activities are part of a broader ecosystem where abusive content is in fact traded, it is promoted, and even monetized within closed online networks.
Well, the findings come amid increased scrutiny of Telegram and its founder, Pavel Durov, as a platform faces criticism over its role in hosting harmful and illegal content. Durov is currently under criminal investigation in France over alleged activity on the platform. And although he has denied all the wrongdoings and the allegations leveled against him.
Well, at the same time, Telegram continues to clash with authorities in Russia as it resists attempts to restrict the app, positioning itself as a defender of free speech. And in sports, three-time champions Kolkata Knight Riders, who are yet to register a win this season, have received a major boost ahead of their clash against Lucknow Super Giants.
Well, star all-rounder Cameron Green has been given permission by Cricket Australia to resume bowling.
KKR was informed by Cricket Australia before the start of the season that Green would be restricted from bowling for a short period of time to manage a lower back issue. It came as a major setback for the franchise, especially with several of their main bowlers sidelined. Kolkata had shelled out 25.2 crore rupees, which is approximately $2.8 million for Green, making him the most expensive overseas player in the tournament's history.
However, the Australian is yet to deliver on that investment. KKR has used him as a specialist batter in their first 3 matches, but he has struggled since then, scoring just 18, 2 and 4, which has raised serious questions over his place in the playing. This development, however, comes as welcome news for the franchise as they look to secure their first win of the season and turn things around. Well, a fresh revival of Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical title Cats has officially opened on Broadway.
And this time, the show brings in a new twist by exploring the world of ballroom culture. Cast member Dudney Joseph explains that it all traces back to Crystal LeBear, who helped shape this space in the world of ballroom. Houses act like chosen families, safe spaces where people come together support each other, and celebrate individuality. These houses are often named after fashion designers, and there's always a bit of fun competition, and this is with each group trying to outshine the other.
Well, I thought it was a great idea, because I'm hugely in favour of just allowing new productions, new things of one's work and everything. It's like with the Phantom Masquerade, I know this immersive version of Phantom. Why not? Why not have a new version of Cats? And I thought that it would be bringing performers onto stage who normally would not get an airing, and the fact that it's on Broadway is just amazing, really.
Co-director Bill Rausch, who first thought of this idea over 20 years ago, says blending ballroom culture with Cats just felt right. The only condition from Weber was clear: keep the music exactly as it is, no changes to the lyrics. The show is currently running at the Broadhurst Theatre in New York's Times Square. Alright viewers, that's a wrap on this edition of World DNA. Thanks so much for tuning in. Taking a short break, stay with us, this is WION.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness. Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
breaking
missiles
news.
And raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is one.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION World is One.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, The West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's